15 guns aimed directly at her head. Every person in the exclusive Seoul restaurant stood frozen in absolute terror. Mildred Johnson, a 27-year-old American waitress, pressed her back against a marble pillar, her hands trembling in the air. She had made a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. The man standing before her wasn't her cheating boyfriend David, the man she had spotted across the room with another woman wrapped around his arm. No. This man was a stranger. A devastatingly handsome stranger with cold eyes, a jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and a small scar above his right eyebrow that somehow made him more terrifying. Park Jae-sun. The most feared mafia boss in all of South Korea. The man who controlled Seoul's underworld with an iron fist. And according to every whispered rumor in the city, the man who had never, in 32 years of life, allowed a woman to touch him. 3 seconds ago, Mildred had grabbed him by his designer suit jacket and kissed him full on the lips. Now, as his second-in-command pressed a gun barrel against her forehead, she waited for the order that would end her life. But it never came. Instead, Park Jae-sun raised his hand and spoke 2 words that shocked everyone in the room. Lower your weapons. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because this story is about to take you on an emotional roller coaster you won't forget. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end. Mildred Johnson's heart pounded so violently she could hear it echoing in her ears. The guns aimed at her face gleamed under the chandelier lights, and she slowly released her grip on the stranger's jacket, stepping backward with her hands raised. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought you were someone else. Please, I'm so sorry. The restaurant remained completely silent. Waiters stood frozen mid-service. Wealthy patrons held their breath, expensive wine glasses suspended in midair. Everyone in Seoul knew who Park Jae-sun was. Everyone knew the rumors. The 32-year-old CEO of Taeyong Enterprises, a legitimate business empire built on illegitimate foundations. The man who controlled the underground with an iron fist. The man who had never, in his entire life, been touched by a woman. The rumors said he was cursed. Others whispered he was simply incapable of human connection. His own mother had died giving birth to him, and his father had blamed him for it until his dying breath. Park Jae-sun had grown up believing he was poison to anyone who got close. So he let no one close. Ever. Until now. Until this woman with skin the color of rich mahogany and eyes that held more fire than fear had grabbed him and kissed him like he was oxygen and she was drowning. Jae-sun's second-in-command, Kwon Min-ho, stepped forward with his gun raised directly at Mildred's forehead. Sir, give me the order. This woman just assaulted you. She must be an assassin sent by the Viper. Mildred's eyes went even wider. Assassin? No. I'm just a waitress. I work here. I thought he was my boyfriend. My cheating boyfriend. I saw him across the room with another woman and I was going to confront him but I grabbed the wrong person. Please, you have to believe me. Lies, Min-ho spat. Kill her. Wait. The single word from Jae-sun's lips cut through the tension like a blade. His voice was deep, commanding, and colder than a Seoul winter. He hadn't moved since the kiss. Hadn't even blinked. His dark eyes remained fixed on Mildred's face, studying her with an intensity that made her skin burn. Sir? Min-ho questioned, confusion flickering across his usually stoic face. Lower your weapons. But sir, she touched you. She violated. I said lower your weapons. The command left no room for argument. One by one, the guns disappeared back into holsters, though the tension in the room remained thick enough to choke on. Mildred still stood frozen, her hands trembling at her sides, tears beginning to pool in her eyes. Jae-sun took a step toward her. Then another. Until he stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something darker, something dangerous. He was tall, towering over her 5'6" frame, and when he reached out and gripped her chin between his thumb and forefinger, tilting her face up toward his, she stopped breathing entirely. Your name, he demanded. A Mildred. Mildred Johnson. American? She nodded, or tried to. His grip was firm. Not painful, but unyielding. You kissed me. I'm sorry. I really thought you were. Did I say you could speak? She snapped her mouth shut. A tear escaped down her cheek, and something flickered in his cold eyes. Something almost human. He released her chin and stepped back, his expression unreadable once more. You will come with me. Mildred's blood ran cold. What? No, please. I said I was sorry. Just let me go and I'll never come back here. I'll leave Seoul. I'll leave Korea entirely. Please. That wasn't a request. Minho stepped forward again. Sir, is this wise? We know nothing about this woman. She could still be a threat. Then investigate her. Thoroughly. I want to know everything about Mildred Johnson by midnight tonight. Jae-sun's eyes never left Mildred's face. If you're telling the truth, you have nothing to fear. If you're lying. He let the sentence hang in the air like a death sentence. Two of his men approached Mildred and positioned themselves on either side of her. She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, to flee, to do something. But where would she go? She was in a foreign country. She had no family here. No real friends. She had come to Seoul 6 months ago to teach English, following her Korean-American boyfriend David, who had promised her adventure and love and a future together. What a joke that had turned out to be. Speaking of David, Mildred finally spotted him across the restaurant. He was pressed against the wall, his face white with terror, his arm wrapped protectively around the Korean woman he'd been kissing when Mildred walked in. He made no move to help her. He didn't even speak. Coward. Jae-sun followed her gaze and noticed the man cowering against the wall. Something dark passed over his features. That's him, he stated. Not a question. The boyfriend you meant to kiss. Mildred nodded stiffly. Jae-sun studied David for a long moment, then turned to one of his men. Break his legs. Mildred gasped. What? No. You can't. She tried to move forward, but the men beside her held her in place. Across the room, David screamed as two of Jae-sun's men descended upon him. The woman he'd been with fled, shrieking, as the sounds of violence echoed through the restaurant. Stop it. Mildred screamed, tears streaming down her face now. Please stop. He doesn't deserve this. Jae-sun turned to look at her, genuine curiosity in his expression. He cheated on you. Humiliated you. You were going to confront him, weren't you? To fight for your dignity. And now you beg for his life? I don't want anyone to die because of me. He won't die. He'll simply never walk properly again. That's not better. Jae-sun raised his hand, and the violence stopped. David lay crumpled on the floor, whimpering, his legs bent at unnatural angles. The restaurant staff had all fled. Only Jae-sun's men remained, standing like statues awaiting their next command. Jae-sun approached Mildred again, and this time when he looked at her, there was something almost like fascination in his cold eyes. You're interesting, he said quietly. You kiss a stranger, thinking he's your cheating boyfriend. You show no fear when surrounded by armed men. And you beg for mercy for a man who doesn't deserve it. He paused. I think I'll keep you. Mildred's stomach dropped. Keep me? I'm not a possession. The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. No, you're not. But you've done something no one has ever done before, Mildred Johnson. You've touched me. Kissed me. And I didn't destroy you for it. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. I should want you dead. Instead, I find myself wanting something else entirely. Something I've never wanted before. Before Mildred could respond, he pulled back and strode toward the restaurant's exit. Bring her. We're leaving. The two men escorted Mildred out of the restaurant and into a waiting black sedan with tinted windows so dark she couldn't see inside until she was pushed into the back seat. Jae-sun was already there, waiting for her, his long legs crossed casually as he gazed out the window. The car pulled away from the curb, and Mildred realized with sickening clarity that her life had just changed forever. The drive was silent. Mildred sat pressed against the opposite door, as far from Jae-sun as the confined space would allow. Her mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. What did he want with her? Why hadn't he killed her? What did he mean when he said he wanted to keep her? She thought about her mother back in Atlanta, who had begged her not to follow David to Korea. She thought about her little sister Destiny, who was probably asleep right now, dreaming of the day Mildred would come home with stories of adventure. She would never see them again. She was sure of it. You're thinking too loudly. Mildred's head snapped toward Jae-sun. He was still looking out the window, his profile sharp against the passing city lights. I'm scared, she admitted. There was no point in lying. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what I want from you either. He finally turned to look at her, and there was something almost vulnerable in his expression. Just for a moment. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual cold mask. I've never been kissed before. Mildred blinked. What? I've never been kissed. Never been touched by a woman. Never allowed myself to be. But you're... She gestured vaguely at him. You must have women throwing themselves at you. I have. I've rejected all of them. For 32 years, I've built walls so high and so thick that no one could breach them. His jaw tightened. And then you come along, in your little waitress uniform, with your ridiculous mistaken identity, and you just... He made a frustrated sound. You just kissed me. Like it was nothing. I didn't know who you were. That's what makes it different. He leaned toward her slightly. Everyone knows who I am. Everyone fears me. Everyone wants something from me. But you? You just saw a man you thought was your boyfriend, and you acted on impulse. You weren't trying to seduce me. You weren't trying to manipulate me. You just acted. Mildred didn't know what to say. She was still processing the fact that this powerful, terrifying man had never been kissed before. It seemed impossible. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a blade or a flame. Women must have desired him desperately. Why? She asked quietly. Why do you keep everyone away? The vulnerability flickered in his eyes again. Because everyone who gets close to me dies. The car pulled up to a massive compound surrounded by high walls and guarded by men with automatic weapons. Gates opened automatically, and they drove through into a different world, a world of manicured gardens, traditional Korean architecture modernized with sleek glass and steel, and an overwhelming sense of power and isolation. Mildred was escorted from the car and into the main house, which was larger than any building she had ever been inside. Marble floors. Crystal chandeliers. She will stay in the East Wing, Jae-sun instructed a woman who appeared seemingly from nowhere, middle-aged, stern-faced, dressed in a traditional hanbok. Prepare a room. Send for clothes in her size. And make sure she has everything she needs. The woman bowed deeply. Yes, Master Park. Mildred found her voice. Am I a prisoner? Jae-sun paused, considering the question. You're a guest. Can I leave? No. Then I'm a prisoner. He almost smiled again. Almost. You're stubborn. I like that. He began to walk away, then stopped and looked back over his shoulder. Get some rest, Mildred Johnson. Tomorrow, we'll discuss your future. He disappeared into the depths of the house, leaving Mildred alone with the stern-faced woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Choi. This way, Mrs. Choi said, not unkindly. I'll show you to your room. Mildred followed in silence, her mind still reeling from the night's events. Just hours ago, she had been preparing for her shift at the restaurant, furious about rumors that David had been seen with another woman. She had wanted to confront him, to fight for her relationship, to prove that what they had was worth saving. Now she was a prisoner, guest, whatever, in a mafia boss's compound, and she had no idea what tomorrow would bring. Her room was beautiful. A king-sized bed with silk sheets. A private bathroom with a soaking tub. A balcony overlooking the gardens. It felt more like a luxury hotel than a prison cell. But it was still a cage. Mildred sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Deep, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. She cried for the life she had lost, for the stupid mistake she had made, for the unknown future stretching out before her like a dark and endless road. She didn't know how long she cried, but eventually, exhaustion claimed her. She fell asleep still in her waitress uniform, tears still wet on her cheeks. The next morning, Mildred woke to sunlight streaming through the balcony doors and the smell of food. A breakfast tray sat on a small table near the bed, rice, soup, various banchan, and fresh fruit. Her stomach growled despite everything. Next to the tray was a box containing new clothes, elegant but comfortable, clearly expensive, and somehow exactly her size. She ate. She showered. She dressed. And she waited. It was nearly noon when someone knocked on her door. Not Mrs. Choi this time, but a young man who introduced himself as Secretary Lee. "Master Park wishes to see you." Mildred's heart began pounding again. "And if I refuse?" Secretary Lee's expression remained professionally neutral. "I would strongly advise against refusing." "Right. Prisoner, not guest." She followed Secretary Lee through the compound, trying to memorize the layout in case an opportunity to escape presented itself. But the more she walked, the more hopeless that prospect seemed. Guards were everywhere. Security cameras tracked every movement. Walls surrounded everything. Finally, they reached a large study filled with books and dominated by a massive mahogany desk. Jae-sun sat behind it, looking every inch the CEO he supposedly was. Gone was the suit from last night. Now he wore more casual clothes, a black turtleneck that hugged his broad shoulders and dark pants. He looked less like a mafia boss and more like a model. "Leave us," he said to Secretary Lee, who bowed and disappeared. Mildred stood awkwardly in the middle of the room. "You wanted to see me." "Sit." She sat in the chair across from his desk, feeling very much like she was in a job interview. The world's most terrifying job interview. "My men investigated you last night," Jae-sun said, sliding a folder across the desk toward her. Mildred Johnson. 27 years old. Born in Atlanta, Georgia. Parents divorced. Mother is a nurse. Father is unknown. One younger sister, Destiny, age 21. You graduated from Georgia State University with a degree in English literature. You came to Korea 6 months ago on an E-2 teaching visa, sponsored by Happy Future English Academy. You followed your boyfriend, David Chen, who promised you marriage but was instead seeing 3 other women behind your back. You have approximately $4,000 in savings and $7,000 in student loan debt. You have no criminal record. You are not affiliated with any organized crime family, Korean or otherwise. Mildred stared at him. "You learned all that in one night?" "I could have learned much more. But I was satisfied with the basics." He leaned back in his chair. "You're not an assassin. You're not a spy. You're just a woman who made a mistake." "Then let me go." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "You just said I'm not a threat." Jae-sun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, rougher. "Because I can't stop thinking about you. About what you did. About how it felt." Mildred's breath caught. "I told you last night that I've never been touched by a woman. I've never allowed myself to feel anything for anyone. I've kept myself isolated, protected, because everyone who gets close to me ends up dead. My mother. My younger brother. My first bodyguard who was more like a father to me than my actual father. His hands clenched on the desk. The Viper, a rival organization, discovered years ago that my weakness wasn't money or power. It was people. So they took the people I cared about. One by one. Until I learned to care about no one. That's... Mildred shook her head. That's horrible. But I don't understand what that has to do with me. Because you made me feel something. He stood and walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of her. This close, she could see the tiny scar above his eyebrow, the slight stubble on his jaw, the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. For the first time in years, I felt something other than anger and emptiness. When you kissed me, it was like being shocked back to life. And I don't know what that means, but I know I can't just let you walk away. If you're enjoying this story, take a second to like this video and drop a comment below. Tell me what you think is going to happen next. And if you haven't already, subscribe because you won't want to miss how this ends. Mildred's mind raced. So what are you saying? You want to, what? Keep me here forever? That's not how relationships work. I don't know how relationships work. I've never had one. Then let me teach you. The words were out before she could stop them. Something about this man, this dangerous, isolated, heartbreaking man, made her want to help him. Even though he had kidnapped her. Even though he was a mafia boss. There was something broken inside him that called to something inside her. Jae-sun's eyes darkened. You would do that? After what I've done to you? You haven't really hurt me. You gave me a beautiful room. You fed me. You investigated me instead of just killing me. Those aren't the actions of a monster. I am a monster. Maybe. But you don't have to be. He stared at her for a long, intense moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand in his. The contact was electric, she felt it zing up her arm and settle somewhere in her chest. His hand was warm and strong, and it trembled slightly against hers. This is the first time I've held a woman's hand, he admitted quietly. Besides my mother, when I was very young. Mildred's heart broke a little. It's just a hand. It won't hurt you. Everything hurts eventually. Maybe. But some things are worth the pain. They stayed like that for a moment, hand in hand, two strangers connected by the strangest of circumstances. Then Jae-sun released her and stepped back, his walls visibly rebuilding themselves. I have a proposal for you. I'm listening. Stay here for 1 month. Let me learn what it means to have someone close. If, at the end of the month, you want to leave, I will release you with enough money to pay off your debts and start a new life anywhere in the world. But if you stay, if you choose to stay. He paused. Then I will marry you. Mildred's jaw dropped. Marry me? We just met. I know. It's insane. But nothing about this situation is sane. His eyes burned into hers. I'm not asking for love. I'm asking for a chance. 1 month to prove that I can be something other than what I am. 1 month to show you that beneath the monster, there might be a man worth saving. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. She should refuse. She should demand her freedom. She should run as far and as fast as she possibly could. But when she opened her mouth to say no, what came out was, 1 month. And I can leave at any time if I feel unsafe. Jae-sun nodded slowly. Agreed. And no one touches David again. He's a cheating jerk, but he doesn't deserve to be crippled for life. He's already been crippled. But I won't touch him again. Mildred winced but nodded. Okay. 1 month. Something shifted in Jae-sun's expression. Relief, maybe. Or hope. It was gone too quickly for her to identify. Secretary Lee will explain the rules of the household. You'll have free access to most areas of the compound. You'll eat meals with me. And... He hesitated. I would like you to call me Jae-sun. Not Master Park. Not sir. Just Jae-sun. Okay. Jae-sun. He nodded once, sharply, and walked back behind his desk. You may go. It was a dismissal, but Mildred paused at the door. You know, most people go on dates before they propose marriage. I'm not most people. No. You're definitely not. She left the study with her mind spinning and her heart beating far too fast. What had she just agreed to? 1 month with a mafia boss. 1 month with a man who had never been touched, never been loved, never been allowed to feel anything. 1 month to change both their lives forever. The days that followed were strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. True to his word, Jae-sun gave Mildred freedom within the compound. She explored the gardens, swam in the indoor pool, read books from the library that contained titles in 5 different languages. And every evening, she dined with Jae-sun. At first, their meals were awkward. Silent. He didn't know how to make small talk, and she didn't know what to say to a man who controlled an empire built on blood and money. But slowly, night by night, conversation began to flow. He asked about her life in America. She asked about his childhood in Korea. He told her about his mother, who had died bringing him into the world. She told him about her father, who had walked out when she was 7. We're both broken, she said one night, over wine and a meal that had cost more than her monthly rent. I know, he replied. Maybe that's why we fit. 2 weeks into her stay, everything changed. Mildred was walking through the gardens when she heard shouting. She followed the sounds and found herself at the edge of the compound's main courtyard, where Jae-sun stood surrounded by his men, and a group of strangers. At the center of the strangers was a man who made even Jae-sun look warm and approachable. He was older, maybe 50, with silver streaking through his black hair and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. He smiled like a snake considering its prey. The Viper, one of the guards near Mildred whispered to another. He actually came himself. Mildred's blood ran cold. The Viper. The man who had killed everyone Jae-sun had ever loved. Park Jae-sun, the Viper said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. It's been too long. Not long enough. Jae-sun's voice was ice. You're not welcome here. I come in peace. A business proposal. The Viper's eyes scanned the compound and landed on Mildred. His smile widened. What's this? Have you finally broken your vow of isolation? Is that a woman I see? Every muscle in Jae-sun's body tensed. She's no one. She doesn't look like no one. She looks like someone special. Someone you might care about. The Viper took a step toward Mildred. Beautiful. Different. American, perhaps? Touch her and I'll kill everyone you've ever loved. Jae-sun's voice was a deadly whisper that somehow carried across the entire courtyard. You already have. The Viper laughed. That's what makes us so alike, isn't it? We're both alone in the world. Both surrounded by enemies. But I see you've found yourself a pretty distraction. His eyes raked over Mildred in a way that made her skin crawl. Enjoy her while you can, Park. Everything you care about has a way of disappearing. The threat hung in the air like poison. Jae-sun moved so fast Mildred barely saw it. One moment he was standing still, the next, he had a gun pressed against the Viper's temple. Get out. Now. Before I decide this war is worth ending today. The Viper just kept smiling. Until next time, Park. And next time, I'll come for more than just a visit. He and his men left as suddenly as they had appeared. The moment they were gone, Jae-sun spun toward Mildred with fury in his eyes. Get inside. Now. Mildred didn't argue. She ran. That night, Jae-sun didn't come to dinner. Mildred ate alone, her appetite gone, her mind replaying the encounter with the Viper over and over. The way he had looked at her. The way he had threatened her. The way Jae-sun had protected her. It was nearly midnight when her door opened. Jae-sun stood there, silhouetted against the hallway light, his expression hidden in shadow. I'm sending you away. Mildred's heart dropped. What? No. The month isn't over yet. It's too dangerous. The Viper knows about you now. He'll use you to get to me. I can't let that happen. I don't want to leave. The words surprised them both. Jae-sun stepped into the room, closing the door behind him, and in the dim light Mildred could see the anguish on his face. Why? He demanded. Why would you want to stay? You've seen what my life is. Violence. Enemies. Death around every corner. Why would anyone choose that? Because I've seen more than that. Mildred stood from the bed and crossed the room to stand before him. I've seen the way you look at the sunrise like it's a miracle. I've seen you spend an hour teaching a kitchen maid's son how to fold paper cranes. I've seen you read poetry in your study when you think no one's watching. She reached up and placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. I've seen the man beneath the monster. And I'm not ready to leave him. Jae-sun's breath caught. Mildred. Tell me you don't feel anything. Tell me these 2 weeks have meant nothing to you. Tell me that, and I'll go. He was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he raised his hand and covered hers where it rested on his chest. I can't tell you that. Because it would be a lie. And then, for the second time since they'd met, they kissed. But this time, it wasn't a mistake. This time, it was a choice. His lips met hers softly at first, almost questioning, as if he wasn't quite sure how to do this. Then, as her arms wrapped around his neck, and she pulled him closer, the kiss deepened. It became something hungry and desperate and alive. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jae-sun's walls had crumbled entirely. She could see everything in his eyes, fear and hope and something that looked terrifyingly like love. Stay, he whispered. Please. I'll protect you with my life. I'll destroy anyone who tries to hurt you. Just, don't leave me. I won't. He kissed her again, and this time he didn't stop. The night passed in a blur of passion and tenderness. Jae-sun was inexperienced but attentive, treating her body like something precious and sacred. When Mildred woke the next morning, she was wrapped in his arms, his face peaceful in sleep for the first time since she'd met him. She knew their problems weren't solved. The Viper was still out there. Jae-sun's world was still dangerous. But in that moment, wrapped in the arms of a man who had never let himself love anyone, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The following weeks were a whirlwind of happiness shadowed by constant threat. Jae-sun doubled Mildred's security. He began teaching her self-defense. He gave her a panic button that would summon his men from anywhere on the compound. And he asked her to marry him. Again. I meant what I said before, he told her one evening as they sat on her balcony, watching the sun set over Seoul. I want to marry you. Not because of a deal. Not because of a month-long trial. Because I love you. And I've never loved anyone before. I don't know if I'm doing it right. But I know I never want to feel the emptiness I felt before you again. Tears streamed down Mildred's face. Yes. My answer is yes. The wedding was planned for the following month. Jae-sun wanted to give Mildred everything, a fairy tale wedding, a princess dress, the entire world if she asked for it. But Mildred wanted something simpler. Intimate. Just the two of them and a few witnesses. I don't need the world, she told him. I just need you. 3 days before the wedding, everything fell apart. Mildred woke in the middle of the night to the sound of gunfire. She scrambled out of bed and ran to the window, only to see the compound under siege. Men in black swarmed the gardens. Explosions lit up the night. The Viper had come for his war. Mildred's door burst open, and Minho appeared, covered in blood that she hoped wasn't his. Come with me. Now. Master Park's orders. Where is Jae-sun? Fighting. We need to get you to safety. Mildred grabbed her robe and followed Minho through the compound. The sounds of battle were everywhere: gunshots, screams, the crash of breaking glass. Bodies lay in the hallways. She tried not to look at their faces. They reached a hidden door that led to an underground tunnel. Minho pushed her toward it. "This leads to a safe house 3 kilometers from here. Go. Don't stop. Someone will meet you on the other side." "I can't leave Jae-sun. You staying puts him in more danger. His only priority right now is keeping you safe. If you're here, he'll be distracted. If you're safe, he can fight without fear." Minho pressed a gun into her hand. "You know how to use this?" Mildred thought of the lessons Jae-sun had given her. "Yes." "Then go. And don't trust anyone who can't give you the code word." Sunrise. Mildred ran. The tunnel was dark and endless. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs screamed, until she burst out into a small building on the outskirts of the city. There, just as Minho had promised, someone was waiting. But it wasn't one of Jae-sun's men. It was the Viper. "Hello, beautiful," he said, his smile as cold as death. "We meet again." Mildred raised her gun, but before she could fire, something struck the back of her head and the world went black. She woke in a cell. Concrete walls. No windows. A single light bulb swinging from the ceiling. Her head throbbed, and when she reached up, her hand came away bloody. The Viper sat in a chair across from her, watching her with amusement. "You're awake. Good. I was worried I'd hit you too hard." Mildred struggled against the ropes binding her wrists. "What do you want?" "What do I always want?" "Park Jae-sun's destruction." The Viper leaned forward. "He took everything from me. My business. My territory. My son." "Did he tell you that?" "He killed my son 5 years ago. My only child. Shot him dead in the street like a dog." Mildred's stomach turned. "I don't believe you. Ask him, if you ever see him again. Ask him about Han Jin-woo. Ask him how he felt pulling that trigger." The Viper stood and walked toward her. "But you won't see him again. Because you're going to be dead before he gets here. And then he'll finally know what it feels like to lose someone he loves. He'll kill you. Maybe. But you'll still be dead." The Viper pulled out a knife and traced it along Mildred's cheek. "Don't worry. I'll make it quick. You seem like a nice girl. It's not your fault you fell in love with a monster. He's not a monster. You are." The Viper laughed. "We're all monsters, beautiful. Some of us are just better at hiding it." He raised the knife. And the wall exploded. Jae-sun came through the smoke and rubble like a vengeful god. His face was covered in blood and soot, his eyes wild with fury, and in his hands he held 2 guns that he fired with deadly precision. The Viper barely dodged the first shot. "Park. I knew you'd come. Let her go." "Or what? You'll kill me? You've been trying to kill me for years. This time I'll succeed." The 2 men circled each other as Mildred struggled frantically with her bindings. Jae-sun's men poured through the hole in the wall, engaging the Viper's forces in brutal combat. "Did you tell her about my son?" the Viper asked. "Did you tell her what you did?" Mildred saw Jae-sun flinch. "Just slightly. But it was enough. Your son was about to detonate a bomb in a school. 300 children. I gave him a chance to surrender. He refused. He was 17 years old. He was a terrorist you raised to be a weapon." Jae-sun's voice cracked. "I didn't want to kill him. I didn't want to kill anyone. But you gave me no choice. You never give me a choice." The Viper's face twisted with rage. "I'll give you a choice now. Your life for hers." Everything happened at once. The Viper threw his knife at Mildred. Jae-sun dove in front of her, taking the blade in his shoulder. Mildred screamed. Minho appeared behind the Viper and put a bullet in his back. The Viper fell. Jae-sun fell. Mildred was finally free of her bindings, and she rushed to Jae-sun's side. No, no, no. Stay with me. You can't die. We're supposed to get married in 3 days. Jae-sun's eyes were glassy. Worth it. Protecting you, worth it. Don't you dare die on me, Park Jae-sun. I just found you. I can't lose you now. Won't die. He smiled weakly. Too stubborn. Emergency services arrived, Jae-sun's private medical team, already on standby. They rushed him into surgery while Mildred waited, covered in his blood, praying to every god she could think of. 3 hours later, a doctor emerged. He's going to be fine. The knife missed anything vital. He'll need time to recover, but he'll live. Mildred sobbed with relief. When Jae-sun woke, Mildred was there, holding his hand. Just like he had held hers that day in his study, trembling and vulnerable. You saved my life, she whispered. You saved mine first. He squeezed her hand. The day you kissed me. You saved me. 3 months later, they stood before a small gathering of trusted friends and loyal men. Mildred wore a simple white dress. Jae-sun wore a traditional hanbok, looking every inch the powerful king he was, but his eyes, fixed on his bride, held nothing but love. I never thought I'd have this, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I never thought I could. But you crashed into my life with your mistaken identity and your stubborn heart, and you showed me that I was wrong. I can love. I can be loved. And I choose to spend the rest of my life loving you. Mildred smiled through her tears. I didn't know what I was doing when I kissed you that night. But I know now that it was fate. We were meant to find each other. 2 broken people who somehow fit perfectly together. They exchanged vows. They exchanged rings. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Jae-sun kissed his bride with all the passion and tenderness of a man who had waited his entire life for this moment. 6 months later, Mildred stood on the balcony of their home, watching the sunrise over Seoul. Jae-sun came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her, his hands resting gently on the small curve of her belly. How are you feeling? He murmured against her ear. Perfect. A little nauseous. But perfect. He smiled against her skin. A baby. I never thought I'd be a father. You're going to be an amazing father. How do you know? She turned in his arms and looked up at the man who had once been the most feared mafia boss in South Korea. The man who had never touched a woman. The man who had married a waitress who kissed him by mistake. Because you know what it feels like to grow up without love. And you'll never let your child feel that way. Jae-sun's eyes glistened. I love you, Mildred Park. I love you too, Jae-sun. As the sun rose over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they held each other and dreamed of the future. There would still be challenges ahead, enemies to face, battles to fight, a criminal empire to manage. But they would face it all together. Because that was what family meant. And after a lifetime of being alone, Park Jae-sun finally had a family. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories like this one. Drop a comment below and let me know, what was your favorite moment? When Jae-sun took the knife from Mildred? Their wedding? When she first kissed him? I want to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, keep believing in love, even the unexpected kind.